How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and today we're going to be talking about Luke and Lando as they take on a cult named the Sith Eternal, which is actually the same cult that brought Palpatine back, and that sentence sounds a lot cooler than this book actually was. Although those things do happen, this story is actually more focused on Rey's backstory and how she ended up on Jakku, this story taking place about 15 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. You see, Rey's father was a clone of Palpatine, and he was kind of a failed clone, so he was shunned by the Sith Eternal, but he was still on Exegol, and they wouldn't actually take him off or kill him, so he was kind of in this weird limbo, with the exception of one person on that planet that actually helped smuggle him off-world, and that dude's name was Dathan. Now you see, Rey's father didn't really know any people. The only person he knew was the dude named Dathan that smuggled him off-world, so when he left, he just took on the only name that he knew and started calling himself Dathan. Now, he found a girl named Miramir at one point while he was doing odd jobs for people, just kind of bouncing around from here to there, and they fell in love, had a kid named Rey, and then eventually the Sith Eternal decided to start hunting down Dathan because, I don't know, he's a property of the Empire or something, and they want him back for unknown reasons. I'm not sure. They didn't make it clear if they wanted him back because he was able to have a child, and clones aren't really supposed to be able to have children, so they thought Rey could be special. They don't really explain it, but anyway, they end up going on the run from the cult. Eventually, the Sith are able to catch up to the family, and luckily for the family, though, the New Republic ships show up and kind of fend off the Sith cultists, and they end up, self-destructing so that they couldn't be interrogated. And Miramir tells the New Republic that they're being hunted by the Sith, which actually kind of gets laughed at by all of the officers because they don't believe the Sith are still around, which is kind of ironic when you say it out loud because that's exactly how the original Republic fell, was believing the Sith were not still around. But one of the commanders actually does feel bad for the family and says to go see a dude named Zargo Axamander. And she says that this dude used to smuggle weapons for the rebellion back in the days of the Empire, and that she believes that dude could help them. So they go off-world to the mining planet to go find Zargo to get some help. Meanwhile, Lor San Tekka, who is not a Jedi, but he is a Force user, shows up to meet Luke, and Luke has been having these really bad visions, and he doesn't really know why, so he gets Lor to kind of help him explore the Force, in a safe manner, I guess, a little bit more, but before they get too involved, they have to go to an excavation site because it's just been discovered that there's a broken Sith holocron that they need to go check out, along with some red kyber crystals. The red kyber crystal kind of makes one of the workers extremely hostile, and Luke has to use his entire Force abilities to just restrain the man while the medics come and inject him with a sedative so that they can remove the crystals from his presence. Luke inspects those kyber crystals, though, and realizes that they're kind of part of a bigger whole, not a lightsaber, because the crystals are just way too big for that, so it's something sort of different. The man says he went to some really dark, old, cold, dead place, and Luke kind of immediately recognizes it from the way the man describes it and knows that that's where he's been going when he gets these visions. So he decides to go to the Jedi Temple on Tython to meditate about it and do a little research, where he finds the name of the planet Exegol. And up until this point, he didn't really believe that that place actually existed and it was more of a myth, but now he's starting to think it might actually be real. So he decides to meditate very deeply on the planet and try to find it through the Force, when all of a sudden he just kind of wakes up and he's on the planet Exegol, and he sees a bunch of these wraiths, and he takes out his lightsaber, tries to cut them down, but his lightsaber just goes through them. So he starts fighting the wraiths, but he can't really fight back since there's nothing he can do to harm them, but they can very clearly be able to harm him, so he starts losing the fight after a while. And then eventually, actually, Anakin in a Force Ghost shows up and saves him. He just yanks his soul back to his body and says, man, something bad is coming. That took everything I had just to pull you back, because otherwise you would have been stuck there permanently. So Luke gets saved by Anakin, and they have a very short conversation because Anakin's oh, I'm too weak. I have to fade back into the Force, conveniently, without telling you exactly what is going wrong through the Force. So Luke is then kind of on his own to figure it out. This is the first time I know of that Force Ghost Anakin was able to interact with the material world. I mean, I'm sure it's happened. It's just the first time I've heard of it happening. And I kind of wish that there was a little bit more dialogue between Anakin and Luke, because, I mean, come on, you love Anakin, and you really want to see him try to teach Luke, and maybe tell him, don't exactly fall in my footsteps, because that's kind of how everything went to hell. We are then introduced to Ochi of Bestoon, who was an ex-bounty hunter slash Jedi hunter for the Empire, and the Sith Eternal contact him and ask him to go hunt down the family, Dathan, Miramir, and Rey, and bring them back to Exegol. Ochi is really excited about this because I guess at some point in the past, Vader told him that Exegol is a place where you can get vast amounts of power, which really interests Ochi. So he knows by doing this mission, he's going to get access to a wayfinder that will take him to Exegol, and the wayfinder is basically just a very primitive version of a holocron, and it's kind of like just coordinates that he can plug into his computer and it'll take him there. They give him an ancient Sith relic dagger, and they say that once he's found the family, the dagger will direct them back to the planet, I think similarly to how Rey found the dagger in the Rise of Skywalker movie. It actually is the same exact dagger. So Ochi goes to a bar and tries to recruit some people for the mission, and it just so happens that Lando is actually at that bar as well and overhears them talking about trying to kidnap a girl and her family, which reminds him of his own daughter Kadara, which he reveals was also kidnapped at one point, and he was never able to find her, so he feels kind of a personal connection to this family and feels like he has to do something to help. Plus he hears the word Sith, and that just kind of immediately raises some red flags in his mind. Lando does a little research and finds out that the commander told the family to go to Nightside to meet Zargo, so he goes to Luke, convinces Luke that, hey, this got some connections to the Sith, so he ropes Luke into his little adventure, and they set off for Nightside. Meanwhile, Dathan and Miramir go to Nightside and meet Zargo, who ends up being kind of a dickhead, and because the family doesn't have anything to trade or sell to him, then he feels that he's actually just going to sell the family to Ochi. I'm not really sure exactly how Ochi knew they were on Nightside. Probably there was some mole in the New Republic that logged the recommendation to go to Nightside or something, but I'm not sure. Luke, Lando, and the Sith all end up arriving on Nightside at the same time, and luckily Lando is able to get a message out to the family real quick and say like, hey, the Sith are coming for you, you got to get out of here. So the family is able to end up stealing Zargo's yacht and taking off. Luke reaches out through the Force and feels a very strong evil presence there, and realizes that there's a person that is kind of like the Sith and they're using dark side energy, but it's really like they feel like a vessel for something being channeled through them. You might say a shadow of a Sith. He meets the dark side user and realizes that she's wielding the blade of Darth Noctis, and he tries to ask her a few questions, but she's just like, those crystals are mine, I need them back, and they get into a little skirmish, and then Lando kind of swings by and picks up Luke to go after the family, and he just is like, alright, I guess I'll deal with that Sith lady later. Zargo ends up meeting Ochi, who is kind of threatening him like, this is BS, like you let the family escape, how hard was it to keep him here? And Zargo's like, no, it's fine, don't worry, I have a tracker on my ship. And in one of the dumbest moments I've ever seen, I feel like, he pulls out the tracker and says like, it's right here, see, it's really easy and we can get on with our business deal. And Ochi's just like, all right, I'm gonna just stab you and take that and then leave. I don't need to do business with you. You didn't encrypt it, or, there's no reason for you to be alive still. So I don't know why he wasn't like, I'm the only one that can access this, so you better not kill me, because it was very clear that this dude was about to kill him. So not a smart move. So Ochi stabs him and notices that the Sith blade actually ends up like drinking the blood from Zargo, and it also makes Ochi very hostile and just, he kind of wants to go around killing people because he just, I guess, flows through dark side energy, which just corrupts his mind even further than it already was. Luke and Lando end up losing track of the family, but Luke knows a old Sith Eternal cultist that he was able to turn back towards the light side named Komat, and he thinks that she will be able to help them find the family. When they find Komat, she tells them that Yup Tashu was killed by Kaiza for the mask of Darth Exum Panshard, who was like some crazy viceroy that started killing all his citizens or something. Comet has access to some super secret Imperial military tech that was able to find a ship anywhere in the galaxy if it had a full reading of the ship and basically knew everything about the ship. It couldn't track them in hyperspace, but as soon as they left hyperspace, they'd be able to find them. So she's able to do that and find the family, but she also does mention that, all these sensors that the Imperials placed everywhere are slowly starting to fail after all these years, so eventually you're not going to be able to use this tech anymore. So it kind of, gives a little reason as to why that technology isn't used for every skirmish or anything that happens from here on out. Comet also tells Luke that Kaiza has been hiding out on this, asteroid, so she can tell that Luke is a little torn on whether to go help the family or go track down Kaiza, but she's like, you know what, don't worry about it. I'll go with Lando, we'll go save the family, you go to Kaiza and do your thing. Luke goes to the asteroid and finds the mask, actually, and when he touches it, he gets some crazy strong force visions that show how that mask was forged directly onto the face of Exum Panshard, and he just started having all this negative energy flow through him, and he realized that Exum did, at least, that screams were just going off in his head, and as the screams got louder, his force abilities started getting more powerful as well, and eventually he started killing all of his citizens because as he killed people, there were more screams in his head, making him, in turn, more powerful. Kaiza comes up behind him and says that she needs that mask because it's going to give her all the power she ever needs, but Luke is like, this is going to kill you, and it's not going to think twice about it, so you need to stop, and he keeps trying to constantly turn her back to the light side, but Kaiza's having none of it, and she starts attacking Luke. Now, throughout the fight, Luke continues to try to turn her back to the light side at, every opportunity, and he knows that she's gonna have to pay for her crimes and stuff, but he still thinks that there is something to be saved there. And that kind of brings up an issue that I have, because this is a perfect representation of how I feel Luke's character should be, someone who is constantly looking to the light side and always trying to overcome that darkness, and someone who never gives up on anyone no matter what, which is a stark contrast to episode 8, The Last Jedi, when we see Luke has given up on everyone and he is just not doing at all what you think Luke should be doing, especially from this book, when we can clearly see that he is someone that constantly tries his hardest to do the right thing, and he never gives up no matter how bad the odds are stacked against him. Anyways, the building catches on fire and collapses, and Kaiza gets impaled by a piece of debris, killing her, so Luke decides, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna go help Lando and Comet deal with the family, and as soon as he leaves, all of those droids start picking up all of these shattered kyber crystal pieces and putting them back on the mask. Ominous. Meanwhile, Lando and Comet are able to help the family narrowly escape from another encounter with Ochi, though Ochi is able to place a tracker on their ship. Mir and Dathan get to talking, and they're saying hey, this is kind of crazy, maybe we need to drop off Rey to get her out of immediate danger, and we can deal with this Sith thing and meet up with the Jedi and kind of sort all our stuff out, and then we can go back for her when it's safe. So they decide hey, we used to work on Jakku, and the Sith cultists found us there, so no shot they looked there twice, right? So they end up going to bring Rey down to Jakku, and, they meet this man named Unkar Plot, and they knew him before, I guess, and he's a businessman, so they give him some money and say, hey, watch Rey for a while, we'll be back later, and the dude's like, okay, I'll do this, but, if you're not back in a few months, I'm gonna have to put this girl to work, because, this money isn't gonna last forever, and they're like, no worries, it's fine, we'll be back in, no more than a couple months. This should be a quick in-and-out adventure, let's go. Luke catches up with Lando and Comet, but the resurrected Kaiza also has followed Luke there, and Comet and Luke end up taking her down to a planet, and really, Kaiza's dead at this point. It's just a puppet being controlled by Darth Exum. So they take her down to the planet and start fighting, and eventually Luke, uses the Force to rip the mask off of her face, and the Darth Exum tries to turn the mask and shoot it onto Luke's face, but Luke is like, nah, I got 2 lightsabers now, and he cuts them in half, or in fourths, and that is the end of Darth Exum, and his power dissipates, and all of a sudden, Luke's Force visions start to, vanish, and he realizes that it was the masks and the proximity to those red kyber crystals that was really making him feel the way he did and was giving him the visions and the negative emotions. Lando is meanwhile trying to figure out where the family actually ended up going, so he has R2 pull up a map of all the potential places they could have possibly gone to, and it ends up being a list of 23 planets, and in what I can only describe as the biggest bullshit of the entire book, he just picks one at random, Jakku, and says, yep, I think it's this one, and then he just leaves, and that's basically all there is to it, and I just thought that was so dumb. Miramir and Dathan drop off Rey, and they also stole some pearls from Panasa, some random, kind of hostile planet. You might also recognize the planet Pasana, if I didn't pronounce it wrong, from the Rise of Skywalker movie where Rey ends up finding the dagger. And they go right back into the atmosphere. As soon as they get up into the atmosphere, though, Ochi catches them, and he ends up boarding their ship with his crew, and he ends up stabbing them both and just killing them right there with really not much else to say. And Miramir's like, she's not on Jakku, you'll never find her.
She isn't on Jakku, she's gone.
And someone sees the pearls in her hand that she stole from Unkar Plutt's store and says, oh, those are from Panasa. That must be where they took Rey, so we'll go there next. And after Ochi killed them and the dagger kind of, made him go hostile, he just turned around and killed his crew and was like, you're totally right. Let's go to Panasa, and he's the only one left now. He has killed his entire crew. He decides, I'm not going to go down to Jakku, even though I'm literally right here. I could just go down, quick trip, check it out real quick and then leave. But nah, I'm just going to go to this other planet, where he ends up going to this other planet, Panasa, and he steps outside and takes a few steps. He walks a little bit, and then he steps in some quicksand and drowns. That's the end of Ochi. Lando ends up getting to Jakku and ends up finding the bodies of Miramir and Dathan, and he's kind of losing it now, and he's like, we got to spend every resource to go find this girl now, we have to get there. And Comat and Luke are like, whoa, we need to step back, hold on, you need some rest, we have no idea where they went, for all we know that, they got what they wanted, they're back on Exegol now, we have no way of finding them, so you just need to rest, I will keep looking for them, don't worry. And he sends Lando back to Comat's house and says, just rest here for a while. After about a week, Lando is feeling much better, and Comat ends up giving him her armor, and, he's feeling good and reinvigorated to actually maybe start searching for his own daughter again, which to me feels hilarious because the last time you looked for someone, both the parents died and you didn't find the girl, so maybe finding people is not your thing, bro. Anyways, that's the end of the book, and we now know how Rey ended up on Jakku, and we also know that these ancient Sith relics allow some of the dark side users to live on through them, and anybody that kind of comes in contact with them can have their mind corrupted and taken over temporarily as well. I was hoping for a story a little more focused on Luke and Lando and their adventures, but maybe next time. So let me know, did you enjoy learning about Rey's backstory and how she ended up on Jakku? I'm Keegs, and I will catch you all next time for some more Star Wars content.